welcome to the Road Travel Podcast, the show where I sit down with people doing interesting things with their lives and discussing some of the roads they took to get there, as well as some of the experiences they had along the way. On today's episode, we have guest Lauren Patchett. Lauren, just a few short years ago, was in the same boat that many of us have found ourselves in, about to graduate school and not really sure what to do with their lives. But Lauren saw an opportunity, she took a risk, she made an investment, and was able to open her own business, a store in Northern Ontario called the Hive. In this episode, we talk a lot about what it was like to make that decision and how she saw that as an opportunity to make the decision to move forward with it, despite all the risks that came with it, and what it's been like running a successful business for the last 5 years. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
This is very exciting. My cousin, Lauren Patchett, is joining us from the faraway land of Collingwood.
Very far.
Yeah.
Very far.
But you had a meeting in the city today, so it wasn't just for me. I don't feel that special.
It was, the meeting was a meeting.
Yeah.
I came here for you.
I appreciate
Family.
that. Family, that's right. And you just wanted the millions of listeners to this podcast to be able to name drop your store.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's promo, good PR. Anyways, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What's new and exciting?
Oh my gosh. It's probably work focused in terms of what's new and also exciting right now. I just opened a store on December 1st and it was a whirlwind. It was just wild. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get the month of November to quite move through my system. It was just because we had 29 days to reno and open up. So it's been... So
you got access to the property, and then in that amount of time, you literally transformed it into a store and opened it?
Yeah, I got the keys on November 1st. I also got the house I was renting on November 1st. And then, we had 30 days to... we opened December 1st. So It was just, so we took up the floor, took down walls, we fixed the ceiling, we did all new lighting and obviously painted the place, and then did all of the build outs, so all of the shelving and custom units, and it was just wild. And I mean, I don't have a team of contractors, right? I have friends and family, and so really feeling the exhaustion, but also such positive response to our store being in town. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack a little bit, because this isn't the first time you've done that. Maybe I feel like your original store, you own 2 stores.
Yeah.
The original store you kind of built up over a number of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I started that when I was 22. So I had finished school, and I had worked for a gentleman in the past he totally inspired me in the retail world. It was a store in Burlington. And so, I worked for him for a number of years, on and off through my university career. And then I graduated school, and school for me wasn't it. I was not the kid who went to university and found a lot of things clicked. I kind of dragged my feet and struggled a lot through university just because I stuck to it, but it just wasn't my, I just feel like I just didn't belong there. So I, tried to get school over with as fast as I could. I did, and then I was time to do something. I was super restless, and I jumped in into kind of a crazy idea. So it was a dying town, and it was a really dying store, and I'm I can do something here. And I don't know, it was crazy.
Well, you had a history at that store, right? Because you throughout the years you lived in Burlington, my hometown also.
Yeah.
We grew up in the same hometown.
Yeah.
But then during the summers you spent a lot of time up at your cottage.
Yes.
In Honey Harbour / on Georgian Bay, and that's kind of where you were introduced to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I worked for the gentleman who owned the store, and so I knew the area, and I knew I'd done all of the jobs that you could in that small town. I'd been at the grocery store, I'd been at the marinas pumping gas, I had done it all. And then this man was hey, do you want to do this entire operation? Basically asking me to run his failing business. And I'm sure, because he was going to pay me more. And I'm you know what? I'm 17. That sounds great. So anyways, to make a long story short, I had worked for him. And so I knew the area. And
oh, so I didn't realize that you actually ran
I managed
business.
his store. the best I could as a 17-year-old, because he was totally removed and he just didn't want anything to do with it. And in the background, unbeknownst to me, he was trying to sell it, but I had no idea.
Right.
Like, no idea. And if I would have known that, then maybe this plan would have seemed like it made more sense, but it didn't occur to me until I was finished school, and the building still had not sold. So 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 6 years go by, and I'm like, okay, I can't watch this go in despair anymore. And so I just poured my heart and soul into it.
It's amazing. What gave you the inspiration to do that? Because that is a big undertaking, and you knew, based on your experience working there, that maybe the town was kind of in a lull, so to speak, or even the store itself. So what was in your mind when it came to, I have this opportunity to buy the store, I'm going to change this around? Like, what was it that made you instilled that inspiration to do that? Because you wouldn't have just gotten into that without a vision, right?
I was so inspired by the gentleman who had been working for in Burlington, at Chentro, that store. I couldn't believe that somebody could make you feel a certain way, at least for me, so powerfully when you walked into an environment or a space that in many cases these days aren't comfortable or welcoming or experiential or even that creative or well thought. Or I just couldn't, I was so taken back by his ability to make you feel a certain way. And I think that's what I didn't realize at the time, but that is kind of my calling, or what I like to do is I like to create an atmosphere. And so anyways, that's what drove it. I was like, I have these bones. I have this beautiful, something very important to me, Georgian Bay, and I have this store that is failing, but there is so much potential here. I can feel it, and I couldn't explain it. And so that's probably seeing what he had done and trying to fathom doing it in a remote area that had just lost all its tourism. Yeah, so it was like a bit of crazy, but yeah.
I want to step back. You mentioned how college wasn't for you, or university wasn't for you, and you didn't really kind of figure out what you wanted to do through that. I find that interesting. We haven't talked about this on the podcast yet because nobody has really said that. I personally can relate to that because it was the same for me. I really didn't get let's put it this way, that what put me in the direction that I'm going in now was not school whatsoever. In fact, I don't attribute a lot to what I do now to the education that I got.
I think I've actually heard you say that once before, maybe.
I'm sure there are some things that that I can relate to somehow, but the majority of the things that I do relate to come from experience outside of school. I think that, when our parents were growing up, and even up until very recently, it was such a important thing that people would finish high school, go to university or college, and figure themselves out and kind of get in that path and go down that road. Has that changed, do you think? Nowadays, do you see a difference in people?
So the only way I can really think about it is maybe related to my situation. I think a lot of people excel and do really well in those environments, friends I would watch friends excel and be passionate about what they were learning in school. So I just think it's different for everybody. For me, it was I should have gone to college probably, or maybe I just should have hopped right into work, but it was just I didn't ever look at myself as a hands-on person. I always thought I was an academic person, but that was actually, the minds of my mom and dad saying, go to school. So I always looked at myself in more of a academic way, but really the case is, and I learned the hard way, as I typically learn all my lessons, because I feel my way through everything, is I am a hands-on person. I need to be in the field. I need to be working with people and gauging their reactions almost to everything. So, yeah. I don't know if that really answered your question.
It did, because I think what I was trying to get at is just kind of something that, if anybody's listening that is in the same position, kind of I'm not getting what I need out of university, but I would really love to go open a store similar to what Lauren's doing. like, don't despair, don't worry. Like, university is not for everybody.
Totally.
You can still make it happen. You just have to find what it is that you love. What is it that inspires you to do what it is that you want to do? You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Was there anything like I'm super curious how you learned to open a store and run a store, like all of the things that went into that. Was it kind of just like trial by fire?
So I had the batch of retail experience. I don't know. It's not. I worked one day in a mall. I bawled my eyes out. So when I say retail, I don't necessarily mean bigger box style.
Yeah.
But I gained the intuitive, like in a small retail space where every single wall is thought out, every single item. There's just so much thought behind it. I learned that intuition, and I watched how this other person had done it. His name is Jason, and I just felt that I had that intuition. Like that was my skill, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like how did you? Because I feel like every time I do something new, there's just you kind of just learn as you go, and it's kind of like, and then the next time it's like, oh, there's this accounting program that helps me, or inventory program, or on your computer. Like there's just so many different elements that would come into opening a store.
Okay.
So
to your point, everything I learned as I went, and as I mentioned before, everything I typically learned the hard way, because I am restless. I am extremely driven, but I am always on the move. And so sitting back, reflecting, thinking about an action plan, maybe not the way that I typically go about things. And so when I say the harder way to go about it, I just mean like pull the trigger. Oh, that really didn't work. Oh, I really can't do my own books. And oh, I wasn't paying attention to the bookkeeper that I did hire because I couldn't do my own books. Oh, but then she really ran me under the table. So everything has been a process, like life is.
Yeah, exactly. And just patience and being willing to kind of like learn from your mistakes a little bit, I guess.
Yes.
And
delegating. Which has been a skill of mine that I also didn't realize until I started work. But that's how I, in this way, have been a little bit more successful, because I've learned to delegate. Like I'm not a writer, so who can I think of that can write really well? Okay, what would you do here? Like picking brains, Or I am not a math person. Don't get me involved in accounting.
Did you have a hard time with that at first? Just, being a creative person myself, I'm a bit of a control freak, so you have a hard time delegating until you realize that it actually helps quite a bit. Yes.
I would say, like, behind the scenes, I have no problem delegating the tasks because I don't know how to do. There's a lot of things that I don't feel comfortable with, especially when it comes to the numbers. I would say front of house or in my actual line of work and what I do feel comfortable with, it's very challenging for me to delegate because I have a vision and, these people want to help you get to your vision, but you've got to let them. So yeah, definitely just more of a learning curve.
Yeah. Is your vision constantly evolving?
Yes, but there's always a backbone to it.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving, but there's very strong emphasis on how we relate to the people that are in our store.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So do you have would you say that you have like a store culture type thing that you've set up and established and that is important to the success of the store?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the number one thing that I've tried to do. I've tried to build a little bit of a community, like a network. Yeah, I'm not the best with names, but once I see somebody a second time, it's like, okay, that person has now made it a point that they are coming here. And so we need to absolutely acknowledge and make them feel comfortable in the most genuine way that we can. Because the truth is I do care about your, daughter going to school and what she's up to and why that's going to, bring you back up to the cottage, or maybe it won't, or we try to be appropriately involved in everybody that comes into the store's kind of world.
When we visited in the summer, I think my brother may have said this, but he said that, you have created a destination. It's not just a store anymore.
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah, it's a destination and a reason to go to Honey Harbour, which is it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, the spot has always been there. It's all to do with Georgian Bay, and I really do believe that. It's the water with the rock and just like the natural landscape that it makes it so amazing. But I do think that there was a lack of interest and community, and so I think we've tried to foster that a bit. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, even like everything about your branding, your slogans, whatever it is, it always kind of points to Georgian Bay, right? It's always inspired by the bay or any number of other things that you have used. Right. And I've really enjoyed that because it hasn't really been done that way before. I haven't seen that before. And so I think that is very cool from like a marketing and a branding perspective. When did you know that was always going to be the driving force behind it when you opened the Hive?
No, I knew my story, or at least the Hive story, was going to be an emphasis on Georgian Bay. I am completely honest when I say that I did not envision a brand at all.
Okay.
And in fact, I went to school for communications and branding, and I was living it, and I was building something, but I did not I did not understand that what I was doing was building a brand. At all. And that's like a classic me. Like, I'm so into it and I'm so focused that it's like, where's the thought? Like, hello. And it takes me like, it's like this massively delayed reaction of 2 years where I'm like, oh, like people are paying attention. Maybe we should have more consistency. People seem to be responding well. Cue graphic designer.
Yep.
My best graphic, like one of my strongest assets is her name is Rochelle Latin, and she has truly elevated and made it a brand.
Amazing.
Yeah. Just shares my vision and totally understands, is the utmost professional, and I've really enjoyed working with her. Yeah, putting visuals to like ideas,
and delegating. You could have drawn up a logo.
Hey, I did.
Was that in that 2 year where you're like, oh, we're making a brand here?
It was the first year, and I'm like, well, we need a sign, right? Like, I'm pretty sure. So, no, I didn't find Rochelle until the third year. So that was 2 years ago. And just where we've come in 2 years with, a branding expert, and just it's crazy.
Do you have brand guidelines now?
I don't know if she'd like me calling her a branding expert. So, sorry.
Do you have branding guidelines now?
Yes.
Oh, she's a branding expert, all right.
We have a really clean, classic one-pager. Like, we don't need to get complicated. Like, here's the colors, here's the stamps, here's the mock-ups, here's the lockups.
So important, though.
And, yeah, like, it could all be explained in one piece of paper, which I think is kind of cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, so.
I want to shoot a commercial for your company now. So on that topic, how important is building a brand if you're going to start a company, do you think? And on top of that, have you discovered like a way of doing it? Like, what was your process in doing it? I know you mentioned there was like a 2-year part of the business that you're kind of like, hey, I can do my own logos and I made a sign. But but like when you did kind of realize that like what you were doing was impacting people, you had a following, you had kind of a network that you were building, and then you lined up with this graphic designer, a graphic expert, as you said. What was the process of building that brand like? Because obviously she didn't just come in and be like, oh, I created something. You probably had to. Right.
It was a pushed scenario. Like I actually remember the moment still where I kind of was upstairs in my rickety office at the time. It's still rickety, but it's a little bit more solid. And I was just thinking, like, I remember feeling and thinking, okay, we have to like get real. Like, we have to actually, what we're doing, we have to like keep doing it, but we really have to step it up in terms of consistency, visual layers, like everything. Like I just felt that elevation happening, and I'm like, okay. So I really kind of grabbed hold of myself and started the search for somebody that, I think at the time I remember looking for a graphic designer. I think that's because I just needed all over refinement. And that's when it kind of clicked to me that, okay, maybe we're branding here. And then she helped me understand, she's been super helpful in realizing that the Hive is, a place, but it's also a vessel. It's moving, it's evolving. We need some things to stay consistent because those things are maybe core values to us. But how do we keep this thing rolling? And so, it's like anything, again, it was a process.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What would you say your core values are?
We are 90% Canadian made, like all of our products, maybe 95%. And so that's important because being an independent retailer, you really have to consider your neighborhoods and your audiences and just who you're going to work with, who you're going to choose to show in your store. And so it was important for us to keep that Canadian, like a lot of really awesome places and shops are doing. And I would say maybe 75% of it is closer to the Georgian Bay area. We do have a lot of awesome suppliers from Toronto and makers. Woo, there goes the Perrier. But yeah, so keeping things local and close, which a lot of people, we're hearing that buzz a lot, but it's important. And I would say we're working really hard to protect Georgian Bay itself. So we're actually exploring and launching different charitable avenues this year because we have the time and the focus, and I've got an incredible manager who is very excited about the idea of now the Hive can give back to the environment, and that's what we've always wanted to do. So that's a big area of focus for this year. So
well, it's so cool because I mean, it's so I don't want this to sound like it's not an authentic thing that you're doing, because it's kind of so on brand with like what your store is all about, by saying like inspired by the Bay, and then it just seems like a natural avenue for you to go down to kind of like be giving back in that way. It's like, of course you are,
right,
which is a super cool thing to hear and see. And I think that is a strong thing for small businesses to be able to do. It just shows a willingness to like give back to where you are, where you're situated.
Yeah.
And I think that's very cool. And I like I like that everything is sourced locally. I think that's also because you're just supporting, everybody's helping each other, right? You've built this community, and it's kind of like the hub of the community now, but everybody's kind of trying to help each other out. Absolutely.
Yeah. And even when like small business relationships maybe kind of close off or end a little bit, it's interesting. Like there's this really beautiful soap maker, Charlotte and Castell. You might have seen them before. They're these sea salt soaps, and they're stunning. And they recently took a break from their business. They were like really killing it. They were in Holtz. They've gotten into tons of different spots, and then they just literally pressed pause. They're from the Georgian Bay area, and they picked up the phone one day and they called me, and they're like, "Hey, Lauren, we've got like so many U-line boxes left over from us packaging soap. Could you use them?" And I'm like, absolutely. Like I would never let a U-line box go to waste. Wow, I sound like someone in retail.
Hold up, what's a U-line box?
U-line is the massive. You would know the catalog. It's thick. It's like shipping products and bubble wrap, and it's like everything commercial.
Oh.
From a catalog, like X-Acto knives.
Oh.
You don't know.
I might. No, I don't know.
You would recognize it. You should look up U-line. You'll know the letters.
Okay.
It's used a lot in the restaurant industry as well.
Is it?
Well, I think.
I want to know now.
It's also ridiculously expensive.
U-line? Is it like U-line?
Yeah, U-line. They cover everything.
And And what? I don't know this. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
good.
Anyways, continue.
Honestly, good.
You're a nerd, is what you're trying to say.
Nerding out over
Yeah.
packaging supplies.
Hey, I'm sure it's important to the people in the.
Ooh. Anyway, where was I going? These lovely people gave me all of this. They're leftover. Like, they're no longer doing that. They gave me all of this material, and it's like, thank you. Like, you did, that just saved me a couple $1,000s. So
It's amazing. So, on a consistent basis, what inspires you with your store? Because you're probably always adding new product, right?
Yeah,
And
weekly.
what is it? Yeah, weekly. Okay, so how are you finding this stuff?
It's interesting the way things have changed, but obviously a lot of it's done online.
Yeah.
Everything is like I can, if I want to get into an Instagram hole, I can.
Yeah.
But I can set limits to that Instagram hole where it's like I'm going to spend an hour and maybe check out some Vancouver-based stuff, see what they're doing over there.
Mm-hmm.
LA is obviously a big hub. New York. But so anyways, Instagram is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that makes
and
sense.
then going into other stores that you admire and not necessarily like it's a thin line between maybe borrowing or poaching an idea or a product, but like really trying to think what's going to like translate to your audience.
Of course.
And just trusting that.
Would you say the majority of your audience is online, or is it the majority of the people that kind of like come through your store, like physical audience?
I would say it's seasonally dependent.
Yeah.
I would say in July and August, our focus is because we started as a seasonal business and brand, we spend a lot of the year grabbing people's attention online because, they can't get up to us. Like their cottages aren't open or the snow just literally doesn't allow for it. So we spend a lot of time building that audience online. In the off season, and then in season our focus is like who's coming through the door.
And you've transitioned into doing a lot of online sales.
Yes.
Recently, or was that a couple years now?
We started online 3 years ago, but it's really taken off within the last year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's to the point where if we didn't have that aspect of the business, we would definitely feel it. So it's kind of crazy. It's really it's a world that it's hard to manage.
It's
E-commerce, like
Yeah.
for a small independent, it was a huge learning curve.
Yeah. It's been interesting because my mom in the last 2 years, I'm
Right.
not sure if you know this, has actually started an Etsy
Yes.
business.
Yes.
And she loves it, but this is the first year where she has actually had to shut it down multiple times because she cannot keep up with the demand.
Right.
So she closed down maybe 2 weeks ago because the Christmas rush was just so intense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been interesting watching her kind of build that and seeing the gradual progression, then all of a sudden the boom.
Right.
And so that's kind of what it was like for you? You kind of like launched it online and watched it kind of like gradually build?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting the way that these, I don't know what you would call them, but I call them kit web developing companies.
Okay, yeah.
Like Squarespace or Shopify or Wix or Weebly. I started on Weebly. But their whole thing is it's so easy to build a site. Everything's easy. It's template based. And even if it's not, hire one of our Shopify experts and they can come in and spend, $200 an hour of your money and fix up your site, and then you're good to go. And it's like, whoa. It's managing what's on the site, like the inventory. It's overwhelming because, our 3 stores now are linked and they do talk to each other, but there's discrepancies all the time. It's like we sell stuff that we don't have.
Oh, so does that mean you have to like reach out and be like, hey, sorry?
Oh yeah, we've done those where we've like called our lovely screen printer maybe at times, or our lovely maker, and said like, hey, how quick can this happen? And they're like, oh, maybe a week. So anyways, it's growing pains. It's easy to build a website, sure, but to maintain and really manage an e-commerce platform is more challenging.
So do you do most of that, or do you have somebody that takes care of that for you?
It's a split between myself and my manager, Claire. Okay. Yeah.
Wow,
so.
you guys are rock stars.
Yeah, we're doing a lot right now, but it feels good.
Yeah? Is it like a constant sense of like success? Maybe success isn't the right word. It's like a constant sense of like accomplishment.
I mean,
Or do you just kind of feel like you're getting your ass kicked constantly and it
No,
just seems
I
to keep
don't feel
working?
like that. I felt like that year 1 and year 2.
Yeah, okay.
I felt like I was getting my ass kicked nonstop. And then I would let one bad review ruin my entire 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm a little bit more resilient. I think I'm a little bit more resourceful. And with that comes knocking off, like, okay, is that really important to us? Do we need to keep this up? Like, is this serving us? No. Okay, let's move forward. So we're very much like we make cleaner, more efficient decisions, I think, than ever before. So that feels like accomplishing things. So wasting less time is fun.
That is, yeah, these days especially, I feel like that's something that a lot of people do. Just wasting time. So Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you mentioned you had 3 stores just now.
2 tangibles and the online store.
Oh, okay, you consider okay.
That's what I'm saying. You have to consider it because it's
okay.
like this whole other outlet that just keeps plugging away way more mysteriously than the people that are walking through your door.
It makes sense.
And then like understanding, click-throughs and how long people are spending on any given page and repeat customers and trying to like add that all into.
Do you obsess over that stuff? Or are you just kind of like constantly looking at your analytics being like 500 people are here, but we only got 1 order?
I think I used to obsess over analytics because I didn't understand them.
Okay.
I still only partly understand them, but you learn what works for you in life or in business. And what works for me is to keep carrying on and like have somebody else look at those analytics. But I just have to keep going in what ignites, me.
Steering the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not staring at Google. What is it? Google Analytics or whatever. It's not.
It's interesting hearing that you said that 1 review would get you down.
Oh, yes. I got a review on Christmas Day last year.
I think we talked about this before.
Did we?
Well, didn't we?
Oh my gosh, Jesse, full circle.
Yeah.
So, podcast listeners, I had this scathing review. I was compared to Pottery Barn. I don't know if you've ever been to the Hive in Honey Harbour. We are not a Pottery Barn. We don't even sell towels. Anyways, it was like terrible delivery, like absolutely nothing nice to say. Like he wished the old store back so hard. And, and on Christmas Day. And so that got me.
Yeah.
And then Jesse, myself, and another friend of ours, Roger.
Yeah.
Was that?
Steve was there too.
Steve was there too. I didn't.
Yeah.
And we were sitting around, and Jesse was the person or actually, it might have been Steve and Jesse.
Yeah.
Discovered that this person was totally a troll.
Oh yeah, he left a bad review on the bathrooms at a Go Transit, a train station, like a armpit train station.
And a supercut.
Terminal or something, and a supercut.
And a pita pit.
Yeah.
But like, here's me, like, feeling my way through things and being hysterical over some guy who was really trolling me. Anyway, I love this story. I tell it often because, stories of failure and like vulnerability and are amazing. I go back to look for the review and Gary Saperstein is gone. So we successfully had his account removed. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jesse.
Good. I'm glad. There's not enough people. No matter what you do, there's always going to be people that give you a shitty review, and they're just, you can almost imagine what kind of person they are. I get it if like something very obviously went wrong somehow, somewhere along the line.
Right.
But there are people out there that no matter what you do, could be the best delivery, the best product ever, they're going to have something terrible to say.
Oh man. And the ways in which they take to the internet, it's always.
Yeah. The keyboard warriors.
Yes. It's wild. And, don't get hung up on those.
Yeah. It's not worth it.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
But you do in the moment for a little bit.
I get that a little bit. Like when I guess I've never really had. It's a different scenario because I've never had like a public facing bad review that can impact your business, right? Like, is that the most stressful part of it? That it's like, it obviously, the podcast dog is moving the microphone around here.
Oh, George.
it obviously affects you a little bit internally, your emotions, how you feel. But was your concern also that like, oh crap, people might see this online and think that we are not what we actually are?
Maybe very briefly, but it really is what I've, I really is, ooh, we're going to sound cliche, or I don't know what we're going to sound like right now, but like I've put that store together with the help of many, but that like everything in there is personal to me.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And it's like I'm putting everything on display. Sometimes that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I do care about every detail, and I do care about how you feel in the space, and I do care if you are having, an adverse feeling or, reaction. So it's really just about how is this person so unhappy when I do try
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that with my mom a few times. She's only gotten a few bad reviews, and one was to the point where she actually shut the store down because she's just like, I can't take this. But she also goes above and beyond to like, she'll send the person a new piece of jewelry to try and like make up for the mistake. But like those people will still come back and leave a bad review. And it's kind of like,
mind-blowing.
And but like that gives you an idea of who that person is. That person was going to complain whether it was the best thing ever or not. So
we've gotten better at, if we do get a complaint, which thankfully is not very often, but if we do, we encourage the person to make more direct contact with us than just on Google.
Yeah, but they won't.
No, they don't. They never. I shouldn't say never. They don't. But at least it's like, here, let me give you a more conversational option to voice your concerns. Like you said, they don't. They never write a second time. It's almost as like it's just like they want that on display. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, but they don't realize how it's affecting the person on the other end, which is people just have to realize there's always people on the other end of those things, and if it's not justified, then take a hike.
Go
kick some rocks.
Kick rocks,
as my brother would say.
It's the other one my friend used to say. Pound salt.
I like that.
Man. Anyway.
That's so cool.
Yeah, you got to be able to like also laugh it off. We get a lot of sometimes funny antics in the store, but it's just people working with people. You get so many great experiences, so many pluses, and then you get like some pretty wacky misunderstandings, I'd call them. And so it's just kind of like rolling through them and taking, other people's feelings seriously, but also being able to laugh it off.
Yeah. Well, that's human nature, right? Like everybody's different with different personalities, and that's just bound to happen. But yeah, I think that's part of it. Being such a public company or business owner, you just have to be able to, you have to have tough skin. Would you say?
Yes. Yeah, you do. Yes.
So are you hoping to build the Hive into an empire?
No.
What are you looking to do?
An empire, Jesse?
I don't know.
Oh.
Let's. We haven't really talked about the news story yet. We briefly touched on it at the beginning. So, were you just at the point where it's kind of like, okay, it's time to open a new store? Did you see a possibility? Like, the new store is more of like an all season type thing, right?
Yeah, it'll stay open for 12 months, and that's an interesting point. Is a lot of people are like, you guys are doing so great, you're opening number 2, and it's partly like we're doing well, and so we are expanding, but we really need to expand to just keep the whole thing going, because we can't just keep operating at a seasonal level. Like 90 days is essentially what we were working with for 4 years. 90 days to kind of make it, and so it was really time to expand so that we could keep this thing going. I need 12 months of revenue, it's funny. People are like, you can travel, right? You travel, so you can take 6 months off. I'm like, I have done that 1 year, 2 years, and then I go into debt. So it's not something I can keep doing. Like I can't just, traveling's more expensive now, and you can't just work half the year and not work half the year.
It's just not how it works.
It would be nice, but I'm not sure. I'm still waiting to meet a person who can totally nail that.
No.
Probably, maybe, pretty close.
I do travel a lot, but
But I mean, like,
different
yeah,
businesses.
like fully like not touching work for 6 months. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It would drive me nuts.
It would drive me nuts too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on that note, because one of the things I did have was I want to acknowledge that you've done quite a bit of traveling, which has been really. I love talking to people about their traveling experiences because I think that it is such an eye-opening experience for everybody in different ways, very different ways. Like the last person I had on, Rachel had done a lot of traveling. She did Kilimanjaro. You've been to India all through there,
Yeah,
and then
India and Nepal and
and then you
Tibet
and then you had a van and cruised through North America and.
That was like, when like peak van movement was happening, we hopped on board that train. And I don't know, it was 2015. It was one of the funnest experiences of my life.
Yeah.
We just rolled literally with the wind. We started in Squamish and then we drove almost into Mexico. We wanted to go to Mexico. My dog ate the passport. I couldn't get into Mexico, so we just turned around and kept driving through the States. And we were gone for 3-4 months. It was great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So like, what experiences did you have during those travels that kind of defined who you are? Let's put it that way. And that sounds really deep. I don't want it to sound too deep.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, just like you learn things.
Yeah, you learn things. Not worrying. I am a worrier. I come from a family of worriers, which I'm not slighting my parents for necessarily. But I am an anxious person, and I tend to worry unnecessarily. And it taught me, it's just one of the most, like, it doesn't get you anywhere. Like the energy spent worrying, like, it's like, whoa. That's a lot, and I don't need to be doing that. And so I think my number one, my biggest takeaway and continual takeaway, like I'm always reminded, like you really don't need to worry about that. Like that is not something that is like going to happen, and you don't need to be going that way, and it's you're fine essentially.
I agree with you.
You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Like, yeah, like trust your gut. Like I'm that's something I'm okay at. I trust my gut in work, and that's how I power on. And I trust my gut in social settings and relationships. Pretty instinctive that way. So, but like following through, and also like just kind of trying to not work with your gut and not worry.
Yeah.
Said worry like 10 times, but
yeah, but that's a huge one. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? I guess, like, obviously different scenarios have different extremes as far as the worst that can happen.
Yes,
but more often than not, you can handle it.
You can handle it, and if you are more candid and like not over here, back here, or not way up here, thinking about what could, or you know what I mean, chances are, like the experience itself is going to be way better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That I think that's a big takeaway. If you are too wrapped up in worrying about things, you miss some really great stuff.
Right.
That you wouldn't have expected.
Exactly.
Which is also something that I've learned through traveling. Yes. I think it's eye-opening because you see a lot of how other people live their lives.
Yes.
Living in a van would be a good way to do it, because like, what could you worry about? There is like a simple way of getting around and seeing things. That to me is just like the most chill, the most representative vision of being so chill and just going with the wind and just kind of seeing it and taking it as it comes.
Right. And like the best story of that is we were bustling down to get to Bend, Oregon, because there's this big meetup of vans that are the same kind as ours. We're a bit younger at the time. We're like 23. But we've got to get to this meetup. And our van is toast on the side of the road. And all of these vans are, scenic Oregon going down the road. All of these vans that all look the same are going down one side of the highway, and we are on the flatbed trailer going the other direction. And I'm freaking out. And I'm like, we came here because of this. We're going to miss this experience. Like, what are we going to do? How much is it going to be to fix? Like, it's Saturday. Do mechanics work on Saturday? Where are we? We're in the States.
Yeah.
And anyways, it turned out to be fine. We found a Saturday mechanic. We paid double, but we wanted to, and we got there later than everybody else, but it was kind of funny because we were the two Canadian chicks showing up, you know, with the dog like really late, and people are like, what's going on? And and then it all worked out, and it always works out. Always works out. Yeah. So
maybe not exactly as planned, but it always works out.
Absolutely.
And it's always all good.
Yeah. It's nice when you get to that. I don't know if it's an age or it's a spot or it's a point in time when you realize that, you know what, it's going to work out.
I feel like it's a state of consciousness also.
Yes.
Because I can relate to that.
It's definitely not an age. I always sorry to cut you off. I always put things on like, oh, I figured this out when I was 24 or 23 or 19 or 27. And it's like, it's a state of, yeah. Yeah.
And it's based in experience, and everybody has those experiences at a different time in their life. I used to worry. I still do worry about everything, but I've also gotten much, much better at controlling that and being able to like mentally like recognize it and kind of like steer it out of the way.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can realize that my brain's going to be worrying about something, and then just stop myself. I'm like, Jesse, I don't have to worry about that.
Yes.
It happened before and it was just fine.
Exactly.
So.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way. Yeah. I think that's a cool way to look at it. Mm-hmm. So everybody should get out there and travel and stop worrying. I don't know. Is there anything that you would say to anybody that is maybe in a place where they do want to start something? There's the classic saying, just start. But like if somebody came up to you, somebody was like, hey, Lauren, do you want to grab a cup of coffee? They ask you a bunch of questions like, I would like to start something like what you're doing, or I want to, you know, be an entrepreneur of some sort. What would you say to them? How should they get going?
When I think back to how I got going, it's really kind of messy and blurry for me. So, giving advice to others on that, you have to, it has to be purposeful. And I think that's where you start. If you are ignited by the idea, no matter what it is, and if it maybe sometimes keeps you up at night, and you can imagine yourself, I don't know. It's like, this is terrible.
Well, how about so when you started your business, how much of, aside from like you needed other people to make it a success and actually get this business going, but how much of it was for other people? Or was it just like, I have this idea, I believe in this idea, this is what I'm passionate about, I'm going to do this? Or was it all like, I want to start this big thing and make a bunch of money and...
No.
Okay.
I had no doubts until we were actually 3 years old that this was something that I was doing, that was working. We, as a creative, you, me, our friend group, like we are incredibly hard on ourselves. I'm incredibly hard on myself. I don't see it as it's happening. And who does? It's really hard. You're in it. But I'm not convinced. I'm a skeptic. And I was like, I'm not sure if this is working. I'm not sure if this is working. I'm not sure if this is working. And so with that, I just kept working. Like I totally threw myself into it. And so if you can imagine doing that in any set way, like no matter what it is you're doing, if you can envision yourself being totally wrapped up, then I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, because it is a labor of love. Like,
and that's what it takes, right? You have to be completely indulged in it.
Yeah.
And just absorbed in it, and I don't know, it's a change of lifestyle to run a business.
Yeah, well, because you're responsible for all of your own time, and whatever comes in the door financially.
And often other people too, right?
And other people for sure, but yeah, you have to be, whatever's coming in, I'm putting right back in. You know what I mean? Like you have to, it's just this, I don't know, I guess it's a sort of dedication.
Yeah.
That just seems to never really exhaust itself. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what's next, but well, I do have a concept for what's next, but I'm not going to share it.
Wise. Because I was going to steal it.
Well, it's just not refined enough yet.
No, I respect that.
And but yeah, I want to take retail further a little bit further. I've got ideas, and I'm really excited, and they definitely push a sustainable practice in and how, anyways, I'm going to leave it at that because, yeah.
Exciting stuff. So Lauren, last thing, where can people find out more about you, more about the Hive? Where would you send them to buy your products?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is this? No. Okay. Our website's great. thehivehoneyharbour.com. We've got the 2 locations. We've got one in Honey Harbour, Georgian Bay area, and we have one in Collingwood now. And as for myself, I don't do a ton of social media, but I am on there. But yeah.
And the Hive's on social media.
Yeah,
right?
shop_the Hive.
Very cool.
We just changed it, so I was like, thinking. But yes.
Cool.
Yeah, we're on the social game.
Get ready for a big sales boom after this podcast gets released.
Oh my gosh, 1 week till Christmas.
Right?
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Actually, though, that's probably my timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
Right? Do you feel that way in your work?
100%. I wish we talked about that a little bit more earlier because I've referenced it just because this is the weird thing about timing is everything.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to realize that timing is everything.
Oh, yeah. As a keener, you want it so bad.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
It's a long game.
Yes.
It is a long game. And you kind of have to, it takes you a couple of years to realize that. Mm-hmm. And then it takes you a couple more to implement that.
Yes.
And then you see it coming to fruition.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast. And
thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up and checking out the new store.
Yes, come visit us.
Very soon. Thanks for checking out the Road Travel Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. To learn more about Lauren or her store, The Hive, you can view the show notes at jessedhunt.com/theroadtravel. We'll see you next time.